When I did Deepwater Horizon, that was like a crash course in acting, filmmaking. Pete does a lot of improv on set. Seeing all those people, Mark Wahlberg, Gina Rodriguez, John Malkovich, Kurt Russell, just kind of rolling with it. He's like, we're going to make up this scene. It was so surreal because I'm sitting there with Peter Berg and Kurt Russell, and we're just writing out our dialogue of what we might say in this scene. And then we shot it.
Just start us out. Basically, how would you define what your job is?
Yeah, I mean, it's unique for me because I'm in the Southeast. So being a working actor in the Southeast has not been, realistic until the past 10 or 15 years or so. The industry in my area has really grown. You had to go to New York or LA to pursue an acting career in the past. And I kind of had that on the horizon one day, but with Atlanta and now Texas is kind of building up its industry, I didn't really feel a need to leave. So it's a lot more spread out, obviously, than it would be in those areas. So I got to get on a plane quite a bit, but everything's done remotely so much now. I can put auditions on tape and send those wherever I need to send them, and then fly out for gigs. So, yeah.
Very cool. So would you say Hollywood is sort of spreading out? It's becoming less of you have to be there and there's a lot more other opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. From what I've heard, I've worked in LA a couple of times. I haven't spent a whole lot of time there, but from what I can glean from my peers in the industry, it's really tough to get projects made there, with the cost and all the restrictions and all these different areas, Atlanta, New Mexico, Texas, and Louisiana, they sort of kind of accommodated all these projects that with tax incentives and with certain areas, they're really starting to build a talent pool and an infrastructure, and they're building studios, so if they can come out here and make a movie that's a little cheaper and still get, some talent to work on it, they're going to do it. So I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Okay. And so you specifically, why did you decide to get into this? How did you get into it? I know that your first big budget, I guess, movie would be Trespass.
Yeah.
How did all that go down? How did you end up getting involved?
Well, I had been auditioning for years before getting that particular job. I just went to an audition. I went to an audition in New Orleans, and I was reading for the director, who just happened to be Joel Schumacher, who's a pretty big-time director. He, directed, kind of discovered the Brat Pack, all those guys, Rob Lowe, and with St. Elmo's Fire, directed one of my favorite movies, Falling Down. Yeah, so I went in there, and I was so nervous I couldn't see straight. I just kind of, it's all a blur of what happened. But my scene in this particular movie, there wasn't a lot to it. It was just, somebody who's showing up. I played a security guard who's showing up to a house because somebody had called the cops. And, it's really just a guy showing up to do his job. And I think our actors in general kind of trip over that quite a bit when they get a role that's it's called an under 5. It's like under 5 lines, not necessarily a big part of the story, and a lot of times we'll try to make it more important than it is. I don't know how I didn't do that in this particular case, but I went in and I read for him and he liked it, and he just kind of looked at me and he said, "Good, that was good, you're good." I was like, "Okay, great." And I got the job, and it was worked with Ben Mendelsohn, who's really coming on as a really gifted actor in the industry now. And so that was my first gig, gosh, probably about 20 years ago.
Prior to that, what kind of work were you doing?
Well, I was auditioning for, I was doing a lot of commercials, a lot of corporate videos in Houston. There's a lot of industry, oil and gas, tech in Houston. So there's a lot of opportunity just to do these little corporate videos. Some of them are kind of vignettes. Yeah. Some of them are spokesperson type stuff. I'm doing a lot of commercials, but I was auditioning for like indie films, and I was kind of trying to break into this industry and trying to build relationships with all these casting directors that were in Louisiana and Texas and New Mexico. And that over the past 20 years, I've been able to do that, but it's been a very long, slow kind of marathon pace. But I'm lucky enough to have built those relationships, and now we know each other pretty well, and they kind of, they pitch me for better roles now, and I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah. So obviously, before you could pay all the bills, what kind of work were you doing that wasn't in acting?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wasn't doing any sort of office. I'm an artist. I think it's right brained. My wife is left brained. She works in oil and gas, so she does corporate type work. But I would have been a fish out of water in that environment. I wouldn't know which end is up. So I basically did. I was bartending for a long time. I did that all through college. It took me a long time to get out of college as a result of that. I just, a lot of late nights and 8 a.m. classes started getting skipped more and more often. But and I did start out as an artist. That's what I majored in college. So when we moved to Texas 20 plus years ago, I just went out and got a job at the frame shop at a Michael's Arts and Crafts, and did that for a few years. They were um, very lenient on the schedule, very flexible. So I'd say, well, I have this audition tomorrow. I can't work tomorrow. I have to go to Austin for this audition. And they were very accommodating for several years until they weren't. And then they were like, yeah, you got to show up. If you're on the schedule, you got to show up. I'm like, well, I guess this is
Right.
where we part ways. So, but at that point, I was lucky enough to really start working pretty consistently, whether it was corporate stuff or commercials. So I was able to, kind of make a little money but yeah, I haven't had a real job, I think, ever. So
Okay. And so, did you take an acting classes?
yeah.
Did you do any of that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
studied I
Where'd you
studied
do that?
acting in college, Louisiana Lafayette, but I was never a theater major. I was an art major for a couple of years, and then I was like, well, when you're a theater major, you have to take all the classes. You have to take directing and set design and all these other things. Like, well, I just want to be an actor. So I switched to general studies and basically took every acting class I possibly could. And at that point, I was also doing theater, doing lots and lots of theater. I would audition for every play at the university, community theater. So I was always acting. I was always, either in rehearsal or preparing to audition for another play. So that's how I kind of cut my teeth on the craft.
Okay. So you told me that for TV, probably one of the first roles you got that was interesting is Prison Break.
Yep.
We want to talk about how you ended up getting in that role.
Yeah. I had been auditioning for that casting director. I think it was can't remember the casting. I haven't read for her in a awfully long time, but that was the first TV show, and I was reading for tiny parts. I think my role, the name of my character is Bailiff in that, and I think in Trespass it was security guard. So it's like you have to do a lot of those before you kind of get a name, for your character.
Yeah.
But it was very similar. I was reading for a bigger role that had some emotion, and I went in and I read for that, and the casting director said, let's try this one. And I don't think I even read for that role. They called me up and he said, hey, you booked the bailiff in this scene. I'm like, great. It's like, I don't care what I'm doing. It's my first TV gig. And, for that audition too, I was probably, so nervous. I couldn't see straight. But I remember I was on such a high after the first day of filming. I went back to the hotel room and I just, had something to eat. And I was like, I had to go back to the set the next day. And I didn't really know what a call sheet was. All the information that's on a call sheet, I didn't know how to read one of those. So little did I know that the location had changed for the second day. I just thought I was going back to the same place. So I woke up, took a nice leisurely walk from the hotel to base camp, which is where all the trailers are and everything. And I walked up and the lot was completely empty. And I immediately started panicking. I turned around and I ran back to the hotel, and somebody gave me a ride to the right set. I don't even know who it was. It was a van. Somebody had a van. I said, I need to get to this set. I don't know if they were part of the production or for the hotel or what, but yeah, my second day ever working on a TV show, and I was late because I went to the wrong location. So, and the first actor that I worked with, this is my first. I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't really know, but at that point, I really had no idea. And I kind of had a trial by fire with this guy because he was kind of a jerk. I'm not gonna mention who he was, but you can look at the cast list and maybe figure it out. But I said, can I curse on here? Is that okay? Yeah. Um, I screwed up something. Oh, I was escorting a prisoner into a room that he was going to interrogate. And I walked him in and I turned around and the camera was in the doorway. So I couldn't leave the room. And there was nowhere for me to go. So I kind of just tucked to the side and I watched the whole scene. I was like, oh man, this is awesome. I'm getting to watch the scene. And the actor after the scene, he came up to me, he's like, you either need to leave the room or get behind that wall because you're not supposed to be in here. I was like, okay, gotcha. So he kind of, reined me a little bit. And then the next scene we were going to shoot, assistant director was kind of telling me, so they're going to be coming in this elevator and you have to hit the button and kind of hold it so the door stays open and all this stuff. I was like, all right, cool, I can do that. And this guy was like, yeah, don't fuck up. I was like, okay. Yeah. And I kind of laughed it off and the AD laughed it off. And I don't know if he was messing with me or he was really pissed off, but my first job, like, I don't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from then on, I thought that's how everybody was. I thought everybody was going to be a dick, but most people aren't. Most people are nice, but I worked with him and he wasn't very nice, but I just, that taught me how not to treat people on set.
For real. All right. So I noticed about yourself, you've played a detective at least 7 times. And in 3 of those, you were named Detective Holloway. So I'm curious how you feel about this. And also on the flip side, is there a character type that you haven't played that you'd love to?
What character would I want to play? The thing is about playing cops, especially a uniformed cop, that's some of the most uncomfortable costume that you could possibly wear. I mean, it's polyester. It's, you have all this stuff on. Going to the bathroom is not easy. And you have to run around. You can't move very well. I really just want to play a series of coaches where I can just wear sweatpants to work. That'd be great. And I played a coach maybe one time. It was in a movie, and I was a soccer coach. I don't know anything about soccer, but I was comfortable. I was comfortable that day for sure. But yeah, and also a Jedi. I wouldn't mind playing a Jedi. When I first saw the first movie of the reboot movies, the one with Ewan McGregor, and they walk in and they're about to fight Darth Maul, and they kind of just walk in and they take the hood off. I'm like, oh man, if I could play a Jedi, that I might just quit. I might give it all up if I could play a Jedi one time. But that window is closing. I could maybe do an Obi-Wan and an aging Jedi. The younger ones have kind of
yeah. Obi-Wan's friend that no one's seen yet.
Yeah.
Here he is, and
something like that.
Okay, so I'm curious if someone said to you, "Hey, I want to be an actor," they've never done anything. What advice would you give them to say, here's the best and quickest way you might have success at pulling this off? What would you suggest they do?
Yeah, I would tell them there's not going to be a quick way for sure. I mean, people that get success quickly and easily, I think is super, super rare. And I would just tell them, what I did when I decided that acting was going to be my career path. I went all in and I acted in every possible way I could. I was auditioning for plays, for student films. I was looking online if anybody was casting for independent films in my area. Every town has a film commission. Go there and they have auditions. Audition for everything. And I was doing plays. I was always doing plays. And some people make a career in film and TV and they ever do theater, and that's fine. That's fine too. But for me, I always felt like I had, a talent for it, but I really had to get on stage and I really had to overcome that fear and kind of break out of this kind of shell and be uninhibited. And that's what years of theater did for me. And just do it. And any way you possibly can, get together with friends, with peers, do scene study, network at some of these events and go out and meet with agents when you think you're ready. Some people say that you shouldn't get an agent until you're ready. I'm like, well, it doesn't mean you can't meet with agents and get used to meeting with people in the industry and talking about what you expect for your career. And you know, you can get feedback from them. And do you have to take classes? When's the right time to, get headshots done, professional headshots? Yeah. And get in class, good classes, bad classes. It takes a while to figure out how to know the difference. You know what I mean? I've been in a lot of bad classes, and I've done a lot of bad films, but I didn't know at the time that they were bad until years later. So you kind of have to go through all that and get the experience and figure out what's good, what's bad, what not to do, and learn from your peers and mentors.
You made me think of a gentleman I interviewed. Was a documentary filmmaker. His name's Chris Barron. He's done a lot of stuff for Nat Geo and the BBC. And he has directed actors before, but it's more of these, well, it's a documentary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one issue he said he's run into is you want the actor to be themselves instead of being the actor. And so he said a lot of times it was very difficult for them.
Yeah.
He said he had Will Smith was on one of theirs, and he said, well, just be yourself and talk about this. And they have to sort of internally go, well, who am I?
Yeah.
Because who do you want me to be?
Right.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. That's interesting.
Comment?
Yeah. I mean, I really, for me, authenticity is I hold in really high regard in personal relationships and in performance as well. I just always try to be honest and tell the truth when I'm performing. And I can get feedback in one way or the other, and depending on the tone of the project, sometimes it's a comedy, you want it to be a little broader. But yeah, that's interesting, because I think a lot of times in interviews and different situations, people are just trying to put up this front of this image, it's I respect authenticity more than anything. I would much prefer you be authentic and tell me how you really feel, and risk being a little bit offended than you kind of glad handing and trying to get something from me. I would rather you I hate the term networking as a verb. I've never cared for that. People say, yeah, go to these events and network. I'm like, well, why don't you just go to the event, try to have a good time and meet some people and build some relationships and try to have a connection with somebody. It's like, that's what I would suggest you do. I think in the long run, that's much more beneficial than, okay, who are you? How can we work together? Like, what can I get from you? As opposed to just having a connection with someone and then you go from there.
Can you tell us about pay for an actor? I know the word residuals gets tossed around. I don't know what any of this means.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, if someone is beginning their career and as they go through the echelon and they get higher roles, I know that there's higher billing,
right,
as they say. Right. What could someone hope to make as an actor, as they move through these?
Well, if it's a non-union project, it's whatever. It's whatever they want to pay you. Sometimes it's meals and credit and a copy of the film, if you're lucky. And I did that for a lot of years. I worked on everything I possibly could. And there wasn't a union saying like, yeah, you're not supposed to work all night and not get fed and jump off this house and roll. You shouldn't be doing that. But union, there's SAG scale, which is the minimum. And I've worked for that quite a bit in our area. They kind of get away with paying a lot of people SAG scale. Thankfully, my agent is able to negotiate a little bit of a higher rate, show my resume and my demo and say, hey, he's done this and this and this. We need this much for this project. So, and as far as residuals go, honestly, I'm still learning how residuals work, because I have a stack here, and it amounts to about $20, but there's 50 checks there. It's like 10 cents and 75 cents, and drives my wife crazy. She's actually in the process of trying to, get our taxes ready, and it drives her crazy because she gets one W-2, she gets, one set of paperwork for her job, and I get, a plethora of stuff. But yeah, residuals, it depends on, if it's a film that's in the theaters, how many people are going buy tickets to go to. It depends on streaming. It also depends on international. I'll get checks from a movie that I did 20 years ago, and they're watching it in Germany, and I'll get a check. I'm like, okay, great. As far as how to keep on top of that, still learning, but I can go to the SAG website and say, okay, I got these residuals coming, to kind of plan, our bills and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest with you. But there are like minimums, SAG, the SAG low budget or a SAG, depending on the budget of the film, you have to get paid, a minimum amount.
Okay. All right. And so residuals then is a small percentage
Right.
of
Yeah. If it's,
the gross,
the streaming, whether it's Netflix or Amazon Prime, whether it's being viewed in the Philippines or wherever, anywhere in the world, you'll get a percentage of that. I've had peers that are a lot more skilled at keeping on top of all that. They know, like, oh, I did this film 10 years ago and they owe me this much money. I'm like, yeah. And with commercials as well, you sign a contract for, in Texas, a lot of times it's a buyout. So it's like, okay, we'll pay you this much and we're going to show the commercial for 6 months and we don't have to pay you again. But if they show, if I see that commercial on TV after that 6 months, I'm on my phone with my agent saying, like, hey, they're showing that commercial again. Like, they need to pay us. They need to pay us. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us, basically, you've done movies, you've done TV. And so can you tell us the difference as far as the work environment? So let's say the number of hours in a day, if you're on a movie shoot versus a television shoot, are they pretty similar, or do they work a little different?
They're pretty similar. I mean, it's usually, a set work day is 8 hours. It usually goes over that, and you get overtime, but they're very similar. There's not much difference. Now with TV, they're on a little bit of a tighter schedule, because they have to get that first, whatever episode you're shooting, they have to get it out for the next week. With a film, you have a little bit more leeway in that regard. They have deadlines, but it always goes overtime. It's always, a 10 and 12 hour day. It's almost never under 8 hours. And it fluctuates so much that the schedule changes. It depends on weather. I could get an 8 a.m. call time, and my scene is outside, and they're like, yeah, and I don't shoot until that afternoon. So I'm stuck in a trailer for 8 hours, trying to not go crazy. And when I have to go and show up and meet this director or meet this, this eccentric actor, and my first time meeting them is after sitting in a trailer for 8 hours. But yeah, it's they're pretty similar as far as schedules goes.
Yeah, I guess I assumed that a lot of the newer TV shows that would be on like an HBO or show, so take True Detective, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I kind of assumed that would be probably shot more like a movie, and then they just cut it into parts, and then, as opposed to needing to get it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, and plus, they're writing week to week. So things are changing. The week before you shoot, the writers are still changing things, and you show up to set and all the dialogue's different, so that's a stressful environment as well. But yeah, a lot of the shows that they're shooting now, they're made to look like a film for sure. They're a lot of the there's so much good TV on. It's very cinematic. In the way it's presented.
Yeah, I find myself, we definitely go to less movies because I almost feel like television is replacing movies in that they're so much more fleshed out. Things that. I mean, you can speak to that, I suppose. It almost wonder, I don't know, for a movie, if you only run an hour and a half, let's say, you're leaving a lot off the table,
Right?
Right. I mean, that's a conscious decision, I guess, you have to make. That
Right.
Do you want to flesh this out, or you just want to be done?
Yeah. And but I think they've gotten so much more freedom in TV as well, with all the streaming, and you can do a lot more on HBO or Netflix. You have so much more freedom to tackle a lot of these different, this different subject matter that you could only do in movies. And they have so much more freedom now. And a lot of these actors that are basically movie stars are moving to TV because there's so much good quality TV, so many good writers and directors that are doing TV now. And I guess that kind of started with Breaking Bad or maybe The Wire or some of these shows that are, they're just really dark and gritty, and they tackle all these different subjects that they haven't done in the past. So yeah, that it's the next show that that's coming out is His and Hers with John Bernthal and Tessa Thompson. And I didn't know what the story was about. I just saw the audition. It was His and Hers, and I was like, oh, that must be like a rom-com or something, you know. So I really didn't know what to expect. And then I saw who was in it. I was like, oh wow. And then, you know, I realized it was a murder mystery, and that I was working with those two actors. I knew it was going to be, you know, another level of talent on that show, and the writing is so good, you know. So yeah, you have so much more freedom with all these different networks and streaming services, for sure.
Hey, quick time out. I just want to say that if you'd like to come on the show, email me at talesfromtheshiftpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll talk about your shift. Okay. Can you tell us a joke about acting? Or about Hollywood?
Well, I thought about that. And the one that kept coming to mind was, you know, the guys that are in LA, and I was like, hey, so what do you do? Oh, I'm an actor. And he's like, oh yeah, great. What restaurant? That's the, that's kind of the joke that I came up with. Yeah. It's sad, but I mean, there's such a tiny percentage of actors that are in the union that are able to work as actors, that are actually able to live as actors. I've been really fortunate the past 2 years, but yeah, that's my acting joke.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. What about slang terms? Slang terms are phrases that only people on a film set might say to each other, or no?
All right, 10-1. When you tell the production assistant that you're going to go 10-1, that means you're going to the bathroom. 10-1. I don't know where it comes from.
What's the okay, you don't know.
Right. I guess if you're going to spend a little more time in the restroom, it's 10-2. I don't know. I usually just say 10-1. But yeah, I have no idea where that originated. C-47 is a fancy name for a clothespin. The grips and all these different crew guys, they have lots and lots of C-47s when they have to kind of clamp something down. Yeah, it's a clothespin, a C-47. No idea where that came from either. Right. Check the gate. It basically means that's the piece of the camera that's between the lens and the film. And it's actually a really, it's music to my ears, because when they say check the gate, that means they think they've got the scene shot. They think it's done. They like it. It's at a place where they think it's a good scene, and we can move on. So that means I've done my job, and that scene is complete, and I can kind of let go of some of that anxiety that I had trying to do a good job in this scene. And when they say check the gate, that means, you know, or moving on, you know, they'll say, all right, moving on. I'm like, yes, I got it. So yeah, check the gate.
Interesting.
It's like dust, like they're looking for dust or hair inside the camera. So there you go.
To make sure it didn't affect the actual film that you just did that was done.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. Let's talk about people that you've worked with. And you don't have to name any names, but I'm just curious about personality types you've maybe worked with, what people tend to be like on set or in this industry.
Yeah. You know, for the most part, obviously, you know, there are all different kinds of personalities in every line of work. You know, I think actors tend to be just a little more eccentric. You know, they're a little more on the strange side. But you know, I've worked with so many different people that were just really kind, down to earth people that were absolute A-list stars. You know, people that were just really. Kurt Russell comes to mind. He was just, you know, he and I and Peter Berg, when I did Deepwater Horizon, and it was during the summer, and we were just talking about college baseball. You know, just hanging out, talking about, you know, who was in the World Series, who was in the College World Series, who, you know, the different matchups, and you know. Some people you can just have conversations like that with. And I think most of the time they just want to be treated with kindness and respect, and they don't want you to make it weird. I don't take pictures on set. I don't ask other actors if it's like a star of a show or a film. I'm not going to ask them to take a picture with me. I just think to me, it's a rookie move. You know, I did it one time on a TV show and I regretted it. ever since. So I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to do that again. And, sometimes, you're going to have great pictures when the film comes out. You're going to have all these stills, but taking a picture with an actor is just, it's kind of bush league. But, I've had A-listers that were super down to earth and kind, and I've had kind of people that were kind of on their way up that were assholes, and that were kind of full of themselves. So it's like, it takes all kinds. I will say this. I will say there's something about rich and famous people. Sometimes they just talk about different stuff. You know what I mean? It's like I was on the set of a TV show once, and there were a couple of the stars hanging out and talking, and they were like, we were thinking about spending Christmas in Dubai this year. And I was like, yeah, that's not a conversation I would have with anyone. It's like, yeah, they're in a different mindset. And
go to Dubai to go skiing.
Yeah, I was like,
in the mall instead of doing.
Yeah, I'm gonna go hang out with my family. I'm gonna go to Louisiana, have some gumbo or something, And just sometimes it's the conversations are very down to earth. But I remember I was working on a movie in Baton Rouge, a film called Greyhound. It's a World War II. I was pretty proud of that one. And I was hanging out with Tom Hanks for a lot of the day, and Les Miles, who was the coach of the football team at LSU at the time, made a visit to the set, and he showed up. And a friend of mine that's a stuntman, Michael Papajohn, played baseball at LSU, and he came in with Les Miles, and he was talking with everybody and visiting. And I was like, oh, that's cool, man. I'd like to meet Les Miles. I'm not gonna, he's talking to Tom Hanks. I'm not gonna walk over there now. But later on, I went and asked Tom about it. I was like, oh, so Les Miles, that was kind of cool. What was that like? And he just looked at me like I'm Tom Hanks. Like, it was like, yeah, I guess that wouldn't be that big of a deal to you. To me, it would be really cool meeting the head coach of LSU who just won a national championship. But I guess to you, it's just another person. So yeah, sometimes the conversations are just different. So yeah, you play it by ear.
Well, personally, just about Greyhound, I thought that I actually remember telling my wife it almost felt like a documentary to me.
Yeah,
it just seemed very accurate, and I didn't do any research to find out how accurate it was, but it just seemed like someone did their research to make sure that what you guys were saying and the way you were behaving was accurate.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I thought you were, it was just the way it was shot. You were just in it, you were in that environment. And it's just, you don't really see movies like that. I don't know how well it did as far as the critics and everything, but it was like you were in it, and you were in it for the duration. And a friend of mine who did sound for that film, it got nominated for an Oscar for sound. And the same guy that did sound for Deepwater Horizon, that got nominated for sound as well. So I made sure I sent him an email, and I said, hey, congratulations on the Oscar nomination. And I got to assume that I'm the common denominator, that, this is why you're getting, recognition as a sound designer is, because of me. So he got a kick out of that. Yeah. I think the biggest gripe from people was that it wasn't long enough, which you never hear that. Usually it's like, man, you could have cut 30 minutes off of that movie, but this one, a lot of people said, it could have been a little bit longer. But yeah, I was really proud of that one. I love the way that turned out. Like I said, it was the action and just the realistic violence of that situation in that time period. I think they really portrayed it well.
I'm curious about this. I always wondered, do you ever have people looking at you and kind of with that look on their face, like, I think I know this guy, and I'm not, how often does that happen? What do you do?
Every now and then it does. Thankfully, I rarely look in real life the way I look when I'm in a movie or a TV show. So I always have glasses on, never have glasses when I'm on TV. And if my hair is growing out, I usually have a hat on. My facial hair is usually doesn't match what you saw on TV. So every now and then people will come up and it's like, hey, were you that guy? I was like, oh, yeah. It's like, oh, thanks, whatever. But a lot of times it's just people looking at me. So it's like, which is a little bit disconcerting sometimes, especially as a guy when you're at the gym and this guy's just, why is this guy eyeballing me? It's like, it's like, oh, yeah, he might think I'm that guy from that commercial or that thing, whatever. So when Sinners came out, I got recognized at the gym, which I don't know why. I was like 20 pounds heavier when I did that film. Yeah, it kind of got passed around that I was in that movie, and I got recognized in the gym. Doesn't happen much anymore, but yeah, sometimes I just have people looking at me, just kind of trying to figure out, like, what's this guy about? It's strange, but I roll with it. It's like I'm very approachable. I love when people come up to me, and I had a guy. I was on the treadmill, and he just walked up and he's like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hi." I didn't know who he was. He's like, "Are you Dave Maldonado?" I was like, "Yeah." It's like, "Man, you were great in that show." I'm like, "Oh, thanks so much." It's sometimes it gets a little weird, but I love it. I love it. I will never turn a fan away. So
Very cool. All right. Let's suppose someone has just gotten into this career. Maybe at the very beginning, maybe they've got a gig, maybe they don't. I don't know. But is there anything you would tell them to definitely do or definitely not do?
yeah. Well, I said the pictures. I don't do that. I wouldn't ask to take pictures with people. It's very easy for us when we have the opportunity, if we're working with this actor that we've idolized our whole life, is to kind of want to pick their brain, ask advice, this sort of thing. But you also have to keep in mind that their workload is probably quite a bit larger than yours, and they have quite a bit of pressure on them to make this project a success. They probably have a lot more lines. They have a lot more things going on. So I would just keep that in mind when you're kind of making small talk, or if you want to go ask Tom Hanks about Les Miles, like, maybe reconsider that and think that, maybe Tom's got other things that he's worried about than that. So, yeah, I would just keep that in mind, that they have a lot of pressure, and maybe don't ask them, hey, what would you advise me to do with this? And it's like, they've got bigger things to worry about than your career path. But yeah, so if you want to talk to them, just have a normal conversation, and maybe talk about what's happening in sports, or whatever. Maybe not ask them for career advice. You know what I mean? That's something I would advise against. Your kids, your family. I was in the car with John Barenthal for quite all day, basically, and we talked about our kids, and talked about what sports they were in, and what was going to be next for them if they're going to college, and that sort of thing. And you have just treat them like real people, and don't try to get something from them.
How about auditioning? Have you had, have you ever been nervous in an audition? I would assume you've had some
Absolutely.
nerves. How do you
Absolutely.
get through all that? How do you work through nerves?
Well, for me, it was trial and error, basically. I had a big problem with nerves in the beginning. Like I told you, I was so nervous I couldn't see straight. And it was debilitating, especially if you have complicated dialogue. Physiologically, you're not going to be able to retain that. You're not going to be able uh, to deliver that if you're all, a bundle of nerves. And that just basically that came over time of going into those rooms and completely, for lack of a better word, shit in the bed in the room, and just being a mess. And then, sometimes it's a drive to New Orleans, and you go there, and it's a terrible experience, and you have to drive all the way back, or Austin or Dallas, from Houston. So I basically got to a point where, a lot of actors are trying to figure out what these casting directors, these directors and producers, trying to figure out what they want, and trying to figure out how to give it to them. And I went ahead and got to a point where that wasn't my goal anymore. I'm not trying to figure out what you want. I'm gonna go in there for me, and I'm not gonna go in there for them. I'm gonna prepare. I'm gonna try to figure out what's happening in the scene. I'm gonna try to figure out as much as I can about the character. I'm gonna go in there and give you my interpretation of it the best way I know how, and you do with it what you want. And for me, that has been kind of the biggest reason for success, is not worrying about what they want, or what they need. Sometimes they don't know what they need or what they want, or sometimes they think they know what they want, and somebody comes in, and and changes that, kind of turns it on its head. And it's like, oh, wow, we didn't think of the scene that way. It's like that last guy kind of switched it up for us. And one, I have a little trick. I don't know if I should tell you my trick. I don't want people. I have a trick that I do when I go in I have this scene. I do the scene a couple of times for him, and I try to figure out what the character's trying to say. It's like, and I asked them, I was like, do you mind if I kind of play with the dialogue a little bit and try to deliver what I think they're trying to say in this scene, and kind of play with the dialogue and put it in my own words, basically. And they're always like, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the writer's in the room and the writer's like, yeah, sure, do, whatever. And that immediately for me takes the pressure off. And I just kind of deliver it the way I think it should be delivered. And he's trying to say this, he's saying this, but he really means this. And I just kind of play around. Once you get in there and you can figure out a way to play and have fun, that's a big turning point for me, is when I can just kind of relax and have some fun. If I do a scene and they say, wow, that was really good, then the pressure's off and I'm like, all right, let's try some stuff now. So, but yeah, that's taken me a long time to get to that point. And so many auditions now are remote. So a lot of times you're not going in the room. You're sending a tape. And a lot of times for me, I send a tape and I end up booking that off the tape. And the next time I meet these people is on set. So sometimes you have to get on a plane and fly to Atlanta and spend 5 minutes in a room and try to convince them that you're the right person for the job. So thankfully that doesn't happen as much with me anymore. But yeah, it's still a struggle. I still have on-set nerves, but if you focus on the work and treating people the way they want to be treated, collaborating with everybody, and that usually works out for me.
Yeah. Well, when you said before, you were talking about authenticity, and it sounds like, maybe the way that Dave Maldonado would say something,
Mm-hmm.
if you change it into those words, then it comes through as authentic.
Right. Yeah.
That sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah. And sometimes, a lot of times I'll put something in my own words. A lot of, you have to keep the writers in mind. They wrote it and they want it said the way they wrote it, that's why they wrote it that way. But sometimes I'm like, if it's the difference between me portraying the scene in a way that I think is authentic and that works, and sticking to the script, then I'm going to go with what works. If I got to change a line or two and I feel in the moment and in the scene and the scene is working, then I'll do that. And sometimes I do that on set as well. I'll just change something, and they'll come tell you if they want you to stick to the script supervisor will come up to you and say, he says "and" here, so we want you to make sure you say that word. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. But most of the time, if it comes across on screen, if the scene works, they're like, yeah, leave it alone. So yeah, authenticity for sure is a way to kind of put it into your own words and make it your own.
What would you say is the biggest role you've ever tried to get that you didn't? That you kind of wish you had gotten.
That list is really, really long now. Hundreds of auditions, and I wanted every one of them. So there's lots of those. That's what I was going to talk about. Is I'm kind of I'm kind of in a limbo right now, to where I've had some success as an actor, but I'm not a name actor. So I'm kind of in the middle somewhere. So a lot of times when I go to read for a role that's a really substantial role in film or TV, a lot of times I'll go and watch who booked it, and it's a name actor. So I'm like, okay, well, I can understand that. I read for this show. I think it was called The Tall Girl, and I read for the girl's dad, and I didn't get it. And I was like, oh, I wonder who booked that. And it was Steve Zahn. I don't know if you know who Steve Zahn is. Very recognizable actor. He was in Treme and very comedic, but he can do dramatic work as well. But that happens all the time. I'm like, oh, well, he booked it. Like, yeah, that's why I didn't book that role. Not that I was in the running, but that kind of, I take some comfort in the fact that, yeah. But the other thing is, a lot of times I think I will book something because maybe they can't afford the name actor. So when I worked on Deepwater Horizon, full of A-list actors, and the role that I booked was a really great role. But part of me is thinking like, yeah, I mean, maybe I booked it because like, yeah, we have this other role. We can't afford any of those people. This guy did pretty good. Let's give it to him. And I'm fine with that too. It's like if I'm in a tax bracket or my wage that I need to earn is not quite as astronomical as some of these other people, then maybe I'll book some things that I wouldn't have. So you know, uh, but yeah, as far as stuff that I didn't book, there's that list is really really long. And a lot of times I'll book something, I'll read for something bigger roles, and I'll book something smaller, and I'm like, oh man, um, and I get kind of bummed out. My wife's like, what? Why are they giving you this? You could have played this and this. I'm like, yeah, I know. But I kind of learned a lesson when I shot a movie. I was auditioning for this movie in New Orleans, and I had made 2 or 3 trips for callbacks for this film. All great roles that I was up for. On the like 3rd or 4th time going back there, I was like, man, just give me somebody with a name. Like, give me a character with a name in this movie. And I got the text from my agent, and I had booked the polling station clerk in a movie called Free State of Jones. So when I got that text, I'm like, okay, I was happy I booked it, but I was like, damn, it's like I really wanted a name. I had all these great characters. And honestly, I went into it with not the right attitude. I went in, I showed up, thinking that this wasn't that important. Like they don't really take me seriously. I get there, and the first 10 people on the call sheet, like I know half of them. They're my peers. They're friends of mine. I'm like, man, why did he book it and I didn't? And it was with Matthew McConaughey. It was the second time I worked with McConaughey. And when I got to set and I'm interacting with him and the director and everybody else in the scene, I kind of started realizing like, wow, this is a really important scene. This is a really pivotal scene in this movie. There's a lot of complicated nuances happening between our characters. And by the end of the day, I was like, wow, I had the total wrong idea about this scene. And that's a lesson that I learned and I take with me for every role. If I'm up for something and I don't get it and I get something else, I'm like, well, I'm going to give this role the respect that I think it deserves. And that happens pretty often, that I show up and they're like, yeah, there's more to this scene than I maybe initially thought. And I treat them all like that.
You reminded me of a scene. I think it's Galaxy Quest. I don't know if you've seen that movie where the actors end up in a situation where it's this real life sci-fi situation. Yeah. And one of the people in the movie, I'm pretty sure, is upset because he keeps saying, I don't have a name. And see, he's very upset. I don't even have a name.
Yeah. I mean, well, once you break the ceiling of having characters that are names, like, you don't want to go backwards. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes you're like, I just did a movie and I was up for these other roles and I didn't get it. And people are like, man, why are they having you read for this? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm just going to go in and do the scene well. And I'll get some, I'll be my little piece of the puzzle of this piece of filmmaking, this art that we're doing together. And I'm happy to play that little piece, and I'm going to make sure I do my part well. But yeah, I want a name.
All right.
I want a name. It's like,
you deserve the name.
If I'm the polling station clerk, just name me Fred, the polling station clerk. Something like that. I don't know. You know what I mean?
You deserve first and last name.
I appreciate it.
All right. I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but is there anything else you want to talk about, the difference between the Southeast acting market, Texas, Louisiana, versus Hollywood acting market?
I work predominantly in the Southeast, so that this is my market. Never worked in LA or New York for any extended period of time. But like I said, that with the tax incentives in the Southeast and the budgets, they're giving, these productions are getting bigger budgets to be able to film here. And they're building infrastructure. They're building studios. the talent pool is getting bigger, that I don't think it's going anywhere. Like, Texas is really coming on in the last year or so. Taylor Sheridan is shooting a lot of stuff here. McConaughey and Billy Bob Thornton and Woody, Dennis Quaid, they're doing this big campaign to bring filming to Texas. And Atlanta is very consistent. Atlanta really did it well over the past 10 years, where once filming started coming or going to Atlanta, they capitalized on that. They didn't deviate from the budgets, from the tax incentives. As far as politically, it stayed very consistent. They said, you're coming here, we're going to make it worth your while to come here every year. Louisiana and Texas kind of ebbs and flows sometimes, especially Louisiana politics is kind of all over the place. So hopefully Texas will be more consistent in the coming years. From what I can see, that's been the case with all the like I said, the incentives and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, we're all competing. Texas, Louisiana, and Atlanta are all competing in the Southeast to bring these productions here. And folks that I know that are in LA, it's just gotten harder and harder to film out there. It just costs more, and it's harder to do. So I hope they stick around, because I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stick around here.
Yeah. I definitely notice a lot of shows with Houston listed or Atlanta, or you have the Georgia Peach. My wife and I, when we watch this, I was like, where's this film? Where I was trying to kind of guess. Oh, look at the trees. I'm pretty sure it's got to be Atlanta or what have you. But are there other areas that you've done acting in? I know I see Quebec a lot. They've got seems like a fairly large
Quebec
filming scene up.
Yeah, I know they film up there quite a bit. I've never worked outside of the countries, but yeah, I mean, Canada's always been they're competing in other parts of the world. I think they're competing with the Southeast as well. It's like, say they can go shoot in the UK or somewhere like that. It's like, yeah, it's going to cost us less to go shoot in Europe somewhere. So I think we're always competing with those, with other parts of the world, and we have to keep up. Otherwise, there's no incentive for them to come here if we don't.
Yeah. Have you done other period pieces? Have you done a Western? Have you done any sci-fi or anything just as not current time?
I did a movie called The Tomorrow War, which was sci-fi. That was in Atlanta. That was with Chris Pratt. It's a really fun sci-fi movie. A lot of aliens. I've done several period films, and there's a lot of, I did a movie called The Banker, which was with Samuel L. Jackson and Nicholas Hoult and Anthony Mackie. And that was basically it was like during the civil rights era, and how these guys kind of figured out a way to give loans to Black folks in the community to be able to buy homes. And that there was, and they didn't, Nicholas Hoult was kind of their face of their business, because nobody was going to take two Black guys seriously. So they were doing all the nuts and bolts, and they were the brains behind the business. But Nicholas Hoult was this this young guy who's kind of the face of the business. And I played an accountant, which who goes in there and kind of puts holes in all their businesses. But yeah, period stuff's great, man. It's so much fun. Sinners was awesome. I got to drive a car from the 1930s. Thankfully, I driven a Standard. I knew how to drive a Standard, so it took me about 5 minutes to learn how to drive one from the 30s. I had a dip in my mouth the entire time, because he's supposed to spit in the scene, and I was like, okay, well, I need to prepare for that because I don't dip. So I bought some Skull Bandits, and I kind of put those in, just kind of get my brain used to the nicotine. And first day on set, they came and they said, hey, we're going to give you some beef jerky. And you could put that in there so you don't have to dip. I'm like, all right, I'll give that a shot. And that actually burned more than the actual dip did. So, and I wanted it to look authentic. I wanted the spit to be brown and all this stuff. So yeah, that was a lot of dip over that shooting schedule.
Puked.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully I didn't swallow any, but yeah, and I trained. I did some training ahead of time. Did walk the streets of New Orleans and with a dip in the mouth, and that got me ready.
Yeah. I have a question about Tomorrow War. I haven't seen it yet, so if what I'm saying doesn't really apply, then say so. But I've heard that a lot of actors don't like doing sci-fi very much because they're not getting. A lot of times they're in a warehouse and they're interacting
Hmm.
with nothing
Yeah.
that's there. Whatever they're interacting with doesn't exist.
Right.
That kind of thing. Is there truth to that, or have you had
I
that
don't know.
experience?
I don't know. I'm in a demographic and an age group and a type where I don't get to fight the aliens all that much. I'm the suit and the corporate guy behind the scenes. Now, J.K. Simmons is in this movie. He plays Chris Pratt's dad, and they get to fight aliens together. But yeah, I was the guy in the suit. I was kind of the Department of Defense guy who was like, "Yeah, you're not going to Russia to fight aliens." It was fun. But yeah, they actually shot in Iceland, and they did a lot of the filming for the outdoor scenes in Iceland, and they got together at these little pubs in Iceland, and they really built this camaraderie. And I didn't get to experience any of that. I'm just a guy on a soundstage in an office, or a Air Force hangar, barking orders at them. So that's one bad thing. Like I said, I don't get to fight the aliens. I'm just the suit that tells them they can't go into the future to fight these guys. So, but yeah, Pratt, Chris Pratt does quite a few of them. He likes to do the Guardians of the Galaxies and the Tomorrow Wars. His next movie is like a futuristic, uh, with a lot of CGI. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I guess if the right number's on the check, I guess they're gonna, you know. But
I kept thinking about that movie, Gravity.
yeah,
That was just all
yeah,
in a warehouse and pulled all over with rubber bands
yeah,
and what have you.
yeah. I mean, if they can pull it off, man, because that's funny. I didn't even think of that as far as it being a lot of CGI and stuff, because the performances were that good in that movie. So yeah, that's we don't go to the theater much either. So we just went and saw Nuremberg, which was fantastic. Highly recommend. That's with Russell Crowe plays the Nazi who's on trial. Michael Shannon is yeah. So good stuff.
All right. Would you say there's any type of adversity that you've had to overcome to succeed?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the business in itself is pretty. There's a lot of adversity that comes along with it. The chance of being successful is very tiny. So, and I've kind of struggled with anxiety my whole life. So I took it upon myself to get into a career field which compounds that anxiety in the audition process with a very small chance of success. Yeah, just the rejection, and it's not a rejection that's like, yeah, you're not right for this, or we're going a different way. It's just you don't hear anything, and that kind of wears on you. You have like 10 auditions in a month, and you don't hear anything from anybody. No feedback. Very seldom do you get any feedback. You just don't know. So you don't know what to fix. You don't know what you did right, what you did wrong. So that can kind of wear on you over time. So you really have to get to a point where you just trust yourself in your performance. I'm a big college football fan. Nick Saban is like, trust the process. Trust the process. If you do all the little things right, the right things will come. That you'll be successful in the long run if you do all the little things right. And that's just how I approach it. But that's taken a long time to get to that point. Overthinking. There's a lot of overthinking over the years of what I could have done and what I didn't do. So yeah. Same adversity all these other guys go through. Every actor that I know goes through all the same adversity, the doubt and everything. So you have peaks and valleys, and you roll with it.
Yeah, I think I read that the gentleman who stars in Barry, the television show
Hmm.
Barry, I forget his name
Yeah.
right now, but that he has crippling anxiety,
Mm.
apparently. It was one of the reasons I think why he left SNL. So
Okay.
if I
I didn't realize he did SNL. Yeah. I can't remember his name either. Yeah, I think it's pretty common. I think it's among actors, just a lot of imposter syndrome and anxiety, a lot of mental health issues. It's weird. It's a lot of the things that a lot of the bats in the cave that I have, things that I go through that make things so difficult are also what make me a good actor. Um, it's a really interesting, I don't know what it is, but a lot of things that I have to do, the places that I have to go mentally and emotionally, um, it just helps to have a little bit of baggage, have a little some mental health things going on to where you can really tap into these different emotional places. I coach a couple of people, and I try to get them to a place in a scene. I'm like, yeah. I need a little bit more from you in this situation or in this moment, and they can't quite get there. And I'm like, yeah, you're too well adjusted. It's like you don't have as much going on as I do. So it's funny. It's an interesting. I try to just keep it balanced, and try to take care of yourself, physically and mentally.
Yeah. Who would you say is the most skilled actor you think you've worked with? And what I mean by that, and I'm sort of picturing you find yourself, you're in a scene, you're going to do scenes with whomever. And as you're doing the scene with them, you're thinking, they're really good. Like they're really good at what they're really good. Like, is there anybody that comes to mind in
Yeah.
that way that you were really taken aback maybe?
Yeah. Hopefully I'm not thinking that. I'm like, oh shit, what's my line? That kind of thing. Gosh. Yeah. I mean, I thought about that, and I was really, really struggling to pinpoint one particular actor. I think when I did Deepwater Horizon, that was just the cast itself and the director. Peter Berg was a director who directed Lone Survivor and many other great films, but that was like a crash course in acting, filmmaking. Pete does a lot of improv on set. You don't really know from day to day what you're going to be doing next, a lot of times. So it was really, and I was just I wasn't that young, but I was the most inexperienced person on set. So I was like, yeah, man, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. But seeing all those people, Mark Wahlberg, Gina Rodriguez, John Malkovich, Kurt Russell, all these great actors, just kind of rolling with it and adapting to whatever Pete had us do that day. These things that he was improving. I mean, we made up a scene on the spot. He's like, "Hey, we're gonna make up this scene. Let's just write out some dialogue." And it was so surreal because I'm sitting there with Peter Berg and Kurt Russell, and we're just writing out our dialogue of what we might say in this scene. And then we shot it, and it was like, "What? Like, are you kidding me?" But yeah, being around all those people, you really had to raise your game to the next level. And I remember Pete just said, "Look, we're going to improv something. What are you going to do? What's your character going to do when you get off this rig?" I was like, "Well," he's like, "Come on, what are you going to do? I'm giving you a monologue, man. What are you going to do?" So it was like he challenged me, and he's like, kind of like a football coach would. He's like, "Come on, man. I'm putting you in this position. What are you going to do with it?" And I just made up some stuff, and I had fun with it, and it ended up in the movie. So I was really proud to be able to kind of rise to that, and kind of it was kind of a sink or swim situation. It's like, so yeah, being in that environment with all those people, that was something that I'll so thankful for, to be in that environment with those people. So much talent working together and collaborating, and everybody kind of raising the stakes.
Yeah.
That was.
So if we watch Deepwater Horizon, what's the scene that you improv for?
So it's a scene where he's like, okay, they did this, they just did the negative pressure test, and we're getting off the rig. So I say, the well from hell is done, y'all. We're going home. And I just kind of start dancing, and I'm doing this little boxing thing, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be on my boat. I'm gonna be fishing. I'm drinking me a beer. I'm gonna be doing this. And Gina's character is just looking at me like, what's wrong with you? But yeah, it was so much fun, and yeah, that was all improv. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, how about this? What TV production would you say was your favorite experience, and maybe one that sticks out for negative reasons, if you want to say?
Yeah. I guess the one that sticks out as far as the one that was the most rewarding was probably Your Honor. That was with Bryan Cranston and Michael Stuhlbarg. And the thing is, I had auditioned for Breaking Bad countless times. never got on the show. So that was kind of like my white whale. I never got on that show, and then the show ended, and I'm like, well, I missed my shot. And then, like right after that, I booked a movie with Bryan Cranston and Michael Stuhlbarg in a movie called Trumbo, about Dalton Trumbo, the blacklisted screenwriter, and McCarthyism and all that. So I was like, okay, well, this is God telling me, like, hey, you weren't able to do that show, but here's this movie. You get to go work with Bryan Cranston. And I got to work with the two of those guys, and I had heard from someone that Michael Stuhlbarg was kind of temperamental, and just be careful around him. And I think they were trying to fuck with me because he was a super, super sweet guy. He came up to me in the makeup trailer. He was like, "It's so good to meet you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." They were messing with me. So, and I had seen Michael Stuhlbarg in a play on Broadway like 15 years before that. So I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna get to work with the guy that I saw in a play called The Pillow Man." I don't know if you're familiar with The Pillow Man. It's a great play. Very dark. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I saw him in that, and I was like, oh man, I get to work with this guy. And I got to tell him, like, man, I saw you on Broadway 15 years ago, and now I'm working with you. It's really cool. So for Your Honor, I got to work with them again, the same two guys that I have so much respect and admiration for. And I got to work with them on this great show, and played a not so nice detective in that. So Stuhlbarg is kind of the antagonist in the show, and I'm kind of his connection to law enforcement. So, if you haven't seen it. So yeah, that's I guess the worst one was the first one I ever did, which was Prison Break, which was a great experience, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And some folks weren't nice, and I was probably hungover the whole second day at work, and I've been sober for a year and a half. So that doesn't happen anymore. So I learned my lesson that, not just don't go out drinking the night before your second day of filming, just go ahead and cut it out altogether, and things will be a lot more smooth.
Yeah. What about a movie set? Any particular favorites that you that stand out to you?
Yeah. This whole experience with Sinners, I hate to say it's, my last movie was my best experience, but I just I can't say enough about Ryan Coogler, the director, and Michael B. Jordan. Those two guys, man. I was so impressed with them. First of all, to undertake this super, super ambitious movie, a concept for a movie, that when I read the script, I'm like, really? It's like, you think y'all can pull this off? And man, they did. And they 10 times over. The finished product was just such a beautifully made film with a lot of different genres blending together. It's not your typical horror movie. It's not your typical period piece. It's all these different things blended together. The music is incredible. And as soon as I walked on the set and I met those two guys, they were so kind and humble the entire time. They're both under so much pressure to get this movie made. There were a lot of complicated shots. Michael B. Jordan plays twins, so there's a lot of things that complicate that brings difficulty. But I never saw them lose their cool, get impatient with anyone. And they were just very gracious and kind the entire time. And I was just really impressed with those two guys. Very humble and super, super talented. Yeah, if you haven't seen Sinners, I think they're going to re-release it in theaters again. So I've heard that. So I would highly recommend going to IMAX and seeing it in a theater. So if not, just stream it at home. But see it. See the movie.
Right. No, it was a good movie. I've seen it. I definitely enjoyed it, for sure.
Cool.
The internal scenes, I know they were in the nightclub / barn / thing. Were the internal scenes at an internal set somewhere else, or
honestly
for that?
I don't know how a lot of that was pulled off with all there's that dream sequence with all the different time periods and the dancing and all that stuff. I'm not sure how that was pulled off. Now all the stuff that we shot was in that sawmill, in that old sawmill. So, I'm not sure. Yeah, I wasn't there. A lot of people say, like, how was that shot? I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know how they did that. I went to the premiere in New York, and I was getting interviewed before the premiere, and they were like, "So, how did they do this? What did you think of this?" I'm like, "I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. All these people have seen it. I haven't seen it. Like, I hope it's good." It was a weird experience. But yeah, all the scenes I shot with the and and with the crew and with Ryan. So very small group of people. Yeah.
Cool. Um, is there ever was there ever a moment when you doubted whether you belonged in this profession?
Yeah.
You thought of maybe I'll
Many,
quit.
many times. Yeah, because it's really difficult to figure out what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. It's like you're kind of just throwing spaghetti at a wall and trying to see what sticks. It's like I remember coming home after another trip to Austin after just not having a good audition experience and just right before Christmas, probably 10 or 15 years ago. And just, you know, I was like, it's like driving 3 hours and you have three doors and you have to pick a door and you drive 3 hours and you open the door, it's the wrong door and you drive home. It's like, you just don't know what works and what doesn't. And then you see, it's very difficult not to fall into patterns of jealousy, of your peers that are doing well. And why are they doing well? Like, why, what do they have that I don't have? And sometimes it's not anything necessarily that you're doing wrong or sometimes they just need a 6 foot tall blonde guy that speaks Portuguese. It's like sometimes it's a very specific and sometimes it's like we don't know. Sometimes they want a woman and they don't want me. They're casting someone else because of reasons like that, just arbitrary reasons. So that over time I've kind of come to terms with a lot of that. And it's focusing on the work and just thankfully I've had some success, but there's still anxiety when it comes to the audition process because now I have a resume and now they expect something from me. So they expect me to come in and nail the audition. So I'm like, okay, I have that subliminal stuff going on in my head where like I really have to live up to their expectations now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and actors, man, we're a weird lot. We got a lot of mental health stuff that makes life difficult, but helps us do our job well. So just it's a balancing act.
And I just want to interject. There's a few times you've talked about driving, and I don't know how many people listening to this understand how big Texas is. So when you say you've got to go over to Dallas or something,
Yeah.
These are drives.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah. So yeah, and driving to New Orleans is about 6 hours from where I'm at. So yeah, it's not like going from LA to, I don't know, Burbank or whatever, it's like, I'm sure there's traffic and it takes you an hour to get everywhere, but hell, it takes me an hour to get to Houston from where I am. So, yeah. Yeah. Big state.
Yeah. I was born in San Antonio, so I'm
Okay.
definitely familiar with the
Gotcha.
spread out. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Moving on. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still do this job?
Yeah. I think so.
Completely filthy rich.
Yep. Yeah, because I have to be doing something. I have to keep myself busy. You always hear about people that retire and are immediately very unhappy because they don't have anything to do. So yeah, I would definitely.
You're looking at one. I stopped doing my other job. I stopped doing air traffic, and I found out real quick if I don't have a project,
Yeah.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
For me.
Right. Yeah, I'm the same way. I have to, and there's a lot of downtime with acting. Hopefully less, but you're always prepping for whatever's next. You want to be prepared. You want to be just ready for the next opportunity. But you also have to fill your day with, I'm at the gym every day, and be productive with some honeydews here and there around the house. But yeah, when I get an audition, I'm like, okay, I get to focus on this. I get to devote all my time to prepping for this. Yeah. So I always fill my day with trying to be productive. So I don't know why I would change that. If I fell into a ton of money, all the pressure would be off to pay the bills and I could just do it and I shouldn't take shit from anybody, but then I really wouldn't take shit from anybody. Show up on set and be like, all right, this guy's going to be, say it this way. No, but yeah,
Well, maybe you could also greenlight your own movies.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you'll just star in them.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah. I'll be like, start making, Nicholas Cage type, it's like doing movies back to back to back movies. That guy does more movies than anybody in the history of this medium, I think. Yeah. I'd do some philanthropic stuff here and there, so.
Okay. If you could change anything about being an actor or the career of an actor, what might you change about it?
Well, I said before that my wife is in the process of doing our taxes. I think that's probably, I get all these tax forms from like 50 different production companies and studios. And yes, yeah, but she has to go through all this and figure out what goes with what. And I have 2 agents. She has to go, who gets commission for this. And it's like, did you do that for them? And, so that I would be completely at a loss to handle any of that. Thank God she's got the other side of the brain and she can handle that kind of stuff, but she still struggles with it. So that would be nice to kind of consolidate some of that stuff. The other thing is every time I show up to a gig, I fill out lots of different paperwork. And I'm like, I fill out the same paperwork every time I show up and it never changes. It's like, how about I fill out the paperwork online and you put it on a card and I show up and say, do you have your card? Yes. Everything's right here. All my information is in there. My address, my phone number, all my tax information, it's all there. So I'm not sitting in a honey wagon with a tiny pencil and I'm trying to, fill out all this paperwork. So yeah, that's a very practical way to change the industry, but I don't know. I don't know if it's doable or not.
Yeah. What is your stance as far as the union go, and also an AI also in the industry?
Yeah, we if you may know that we went on strike for a lot of different issues a few years ago, and AI was part of that. And honestly, I wasn't that concerned with it. I'm not real concerned about it now, but I really wasn't then. I'm like, there's no way AI is gonna take our jobs. Like that's how could that ever happen? But it started to be more and more of a possibility and a threat in recent years. So basically, we didn't want people to be able to say, okay, just going to recreate your voice and your image for this little movie here, and you're never going to know about it. Those kind of things, to where they can be really sneaky about it and just use it and not tell anybody and get away with it. I think that's now, as far as just making an entire movie with AI, I just don't think it's going to translate. I don't think you can't, I keep saying authenticity, but the real, authentic human experience and human emotion and performance, I don't think you can duplicate that. I don't think AI can do it yet. Whether they can do it years down the line, I don't know, but I don't think they're there yet. Now, maybe with the way our brains are changing and adapting to screens and to all this different technology, maybe intellectually we will change as a species and we'll just adapt to AI. I don't know. Hopefully my career will be over and I'll be years down the line. I won't have to worry about it. But yeah, that's a concept that I kind of rattle around in my head, where it's kind of like Wally, we're just sitting in a chair and we're watching these AI videos and there's no really intellect going into it. So yeah, I'm not worried about it.
All right. Do you have a hot take about this industry? Something that other people might disagree with that you work with?
I think that social media marketing is important to an extent, but I think the work and the genuine relationships you build with folks will trump that every day of the week. Now, I could be wrong. I mean, I've worked with people that had very minute acting resume, but they had 100,000 followers on Instagram. So that happens sometimes, where they go by who's got the most followers and they end up booking the job. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit. So, but to me, if I'm gonna focus on something, I'm gonna focus on the work. and the relationships. I'm not going to spend all my time trying to build my brand. I would much rather learn a new skill or find ways to become a better actor. I think that your time is much better spent in that way.
Cool. All right. We're up to the speed round now, the overrated or / underrated section. So I'll read you something and you just tell me overrated, underrated. You can expand on it if you want or not. So here we go. Number 1, overrated or underrated, self-tape auditions.
Well, I'm right out of the gate. I'm underrated. I think they're fine. I love, a lot of people don't like them, but if I can tape like 2 or 3 auditions in a day, go have lunch and go sleep in my own bed, as opposed to spending all day on an airplane, I'll do that every day of the week. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think I am elaborating quite a bit now. There's something special about being in the room, and there's this energy that you feel from meeting people, and it just goes to another level that you can't quite grasp in a taped audition. But yeah, I would rather go home and sleep in my own bed than be on a plane all day.
All right. What about method acting?
Overrated. Now, I say it's overrated, but you got Daniel Day-Lewis, who's a freaking genius. For me, overrated. I'm not gonna do it.
Okay. All right. Number 3, craft services, the on-set food.
Underrated. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that they have on set, that if they could feed you right, and they have all these different options, that's your fuel for the day, man.
All right. Red carpet premieres.
I just went to one. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. Underrated.
All right. Background actors.
Underrated for sure. Yeah, they don't get enough. They don't get enough credit, and especially stunt performers, which are not background, but stunt people will be getting an Oscar nomination here in the next couple of years. Yeah,
very cool. All right. How about night shoots?
Overrated.
All right,
man. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
Acting agents.
Underrated. Yeah, they do a lot of work behind the scenes, and they fight for me in the room, and I appreciate it.
All right. IMDb star meters.
Way overrated. And I just started looking at mine in the last couple of years, and I was like, and I should have never looked at it. It's like, oh, wow. Because it got to a point where it was like, wow, that's really good. And then when I wasn't talking about it anymore, it started getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, okay, I should probably not look at that anymore. It's all about, what's happening in the news, what's current. So it's like, yeah, just
okay,
not worth worrying about.
Okay. Trailers / green rooms.
Underrated. If I have the choice between being in a honey wagon, which is a tiny little cramped space for 8 hours, or a triple banger, which is 3 decent sized rooms, I'll take the triple banger and I'll be a lot happier. When people talk about the trailer, like, oh, my trailer's bigger, just don't put me in a closet and I'll be happy.
All right. Typecasting.
Underrated. I love it. Bring it on.
All right. A degree in theater or acting.
That's a tough one. For film and TV, overrated. But I have tons of friends that have theater degrees, and they're doing great things in theater. So doesn't help you a whole lot in film and TV, other than acting. You're able to act all the time, and that always helps you become a better actor. So,
right. Okay. Scientology.
No clue. I'm assuming it's overrated because nobody's ever asked me to join.
Okay. How about taking an improv class?
Underrated. Yeah. Anytime you can stretch and work on your instrument, your body, and your brain, go for it.
Have you ever come up here to Chicago to do one? That's our thing.
Is that an invitation? Ask,
Yeah.
ask, what is it? Second City? Yeah. So, have their people call my people.
All right. I'm on it. Okay. We're almost done. The 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Underrated, because I've just recently gotten within a degree of him on several different things. So I'm proud of that. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. And then finally, Netflix.
Underrated. Go see His and Hers on Netflix. How could I argue with that? They're where do you see this show on Netflix? It's gonna blow your mind.
All right. And then, okay. That's it for the overrated, underrated segment. Okay. Great job. All right. Final question of the day. What is a secret that most people do not know about this career?
And I don't know if people know this or not, but a lot of people throw out with these Hollywood actors, and I'm like, well, you do know that the people you see on TV, the uber successful actors that you're criticizing, make up a tiny, tiny percentage of people that actually make a living in this business. It's like 90% of actors are unemployed. I'm currently unemployed. I hope that changes soon. Yeah, only like 2% of people in the union make a living, so are able to live off acting alone. Just give them a break. It's like it's tough to be successful in this business. There's only a tiny percentage that are able to do it, and I'm thankful currently that I'm able to do that. So, yeah.
It sounds almost like a sales job in a couple ways. One, you have to sell yourself.
Right.
But two, feast or famine.
Yeah. Yeah. If I go through a dry period and I'm not even getting auditions, I'm not hearing anything, I've gotten really accustomed to just be patient, because when it comes all at once, and I'll get like 3 or 4 auditions within a couple of days, and I find myself having to prepare for all of them, all at the same time. And then I'll maybe book something, and then I'll book something else, and then they're conflicting, and I'm stressing out about, are we going to have 2 different agents that are kind of negotiating all this, and that gets stressful too. So when nothing's happening, I just try to enjoy it and just be ready when those opportunities come.
All right, Dave, that's it. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been absolutely fantastic.
Great, man. I'm glad. I enjoyed it.